And welcome to another Round the Rotary with me, your host, JP Warren. And before we get kicked off, I'd like to say that Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specializes in project engineering and well site supervision in all disciplines in the oil and gas industry. You can contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com to see what CPC can do for you today. That's my announcement, boys. And let's get this. With us today, we have Alan Bernard, the Senior Vice President over at Gyrodata, and you're back in Houston, right?
I am, yeah.
You just got back internet from overseas, seeing your family. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
All right, and so I guess let's get this kicked off. It's Friday afternoon. It's ready for the weekend, but let's dive into your background a little bit. I mean, I went to your LinkedIn profile, and you have a very diverse geographic background. So I'd love to talk to you about that. So,
yeah, I've been with Gyrodata forever, it seems, but it's been an enjoyable journey. Yeah, I joined Gyrodata 32 years ago, approximately, in Aberdeen, in Scotland. You can probably tell from my accent, I'm Scottish. So, yeah, when I was studying, I worked in the gyro calibration facility for Gyrodata, and then once I finished studying, I then became a field engineer for Gyrodata in Aberdeen. And
so, what did you study?
I studied electrical and electronic engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once I finished studying, and I then got a full-time job offshore as a field engineer in the UK.
All right.
And then with Gyrodata at the time, it was a very small company. It's maybe a dozen or 18 people in the whole of the Eastern Hemisphere, and that allowed progression and growth. So after 2 years of working in the field, a job came up in the office, and I said yes.
That was in Aberdeen.
One of many yeses in my career. So something I've learned is just say yes and get on with it and take the challenge. So that was a stepping stone for me into the office, even though I was very young at the time. I was in my mid-20s. And then an opportunity came up about 18 months after that. Would you like to go to Abu Dhabi for 2 weeks? Again, yes.
Yes.
So off to Abu Dhabi for 2 weeks. It ended up being 6 months. We won a contract. We started to work in the Middle East. It was our first ever work in the Middle East. It was Gyrodata's first expansion to there.
How did you find that? Because I've had some experience doing a business over in the Middle East. I was over in Saudi Arabia for a year and a half. And how did you find that going from, I guess, was that the first time you traveled to the Middle East?
That was actually, yeah.
Yeah. So how was that for you, if you can recall?
I remember it vividly. It was August the 21st, 1993, and arrived on the British Airways flight BA125 at 10:43 at night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's one of these chapters in life, JP, that you remember. Yeah, I remember it.
Oh, and I'll bet it was completely different too.
Well, being in Aberdeen, where it's cold and miserable, they call it the grey town for a reason, because it's normally grey skies and grey buildings, and it's grey because of the rain. So for me, the transformation was the temperature. I arrived in the middle of August. It was extremely hot. It was 120, 130 degrees Fahrenheit, 100% humidity. I know Houstonians are used to some of those temperatures, but when you come from Aberdeen or from Scotland, it's a bit of a
shock.
It's a culture shock,
right?
But I arrived there, and I was supposed to be babysitting the office for 2 weeks, where the manager that we'd employed in the Middle East went on vacation back to Spain.
Okay.
So in the middle of him being away, we got the contract award, which was at the time, it's Radma Opco. It was one of the largest contracts in the Middle East, which is now ADNOC. It's one of the ADNOC drilling groups.
All right.
So the contract started, and then all hell broke loose. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It was supposed to be the month after. So I got thrown into operations, and operations is obviously my passion, and I got stuck straight in, and then we executed on that. And then 2 weeks became a month, became 2 months, became 3 months.
Right.
My electricity in my house in Aberdeen was cut off. My gas was cut off. My bills were unpaid. But I continued to say yes. And then they offered me a full-time job in the Middle East, and I was there for 11 years.
Okay.
Various positions. I became the regional manager in 1999 after a few years. Then I left there in 2004 to go to the Far East. And that was always, again, it was a yes. My boss calls. I was in France on vacation in the summer of 2004, and my manager at the time, the vice president of operations, calls me up and said, Alan, would you like to take up a new position in Kuala Lumpur? And before I even spoke to my wife, yes.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. Have you always been just kind of, not just professionally, is it always like, yes, go get it? I mean, that's kind of, without even bringing it up to your wife, I mean, it's kind of.
Um, I keep saying this to some of the juniors in Gyrodata and that I meet, that think about an opportunity and really think about it, because if you say no, will that opportunity come up again?
Right.
And I say yes, it's because I'm not a rollover. I'm quite a dominant personality or a strong personality, but this is a great challenge. It's something new. So after a decade in the Middle East, after 2 or 3 years, you end up, I wouldn't say Groundhog Year or Groundhog Day, but you end up becoming, complacent's the wrong word, but you end up redoing roughly the same job every day.
You fight the same fights every day.
You fight the same fight. You're retendering work you've already won 2 or 3 times in the past. You visit every country. You've got some great people, some great fans, and you stagnate.
Right. And so you're ready to kind of break that a little bit and start, something new.
It's like a shark. You got to keep swimming forward.
Okay. Yeah? All right.
Yeah, so I'm not saying I'm a shark by any means, but you got to keep swimming. You got to keep going forward. If you can't swim forward, you basically drown. Yeah. So that was always my own work ethic. That think about it, take a new challenge, and say yes, go.
And that's the thing. I think that's extremely important. I mean, even when it comes to a challenge or a role that you're not familiar with, you don't know, and you're not even sure if you're capable to do it. It's one of those things that you say yes, figure it out, grow in that change.
Well, Gyrodata is such a great company to work for. All the way through my 3 decades with Gyrodata, to the managers I've had have been great. They've been, right. It's like an entrepreneurial type company where you can grow. You're not just in a box like these larger corporations. You can think, you can do your own thing. You've got your own fingerprint on projects. Right. So when my boss asked me to go, it was like, well, you're like, wow, you think I can do that? And it's like, yes, I can. And my family's been extremely supportive. My wife, I met in Abu Dhabi. Okay. Extremely supportive. And I think she was ready for a change as well. 12 years in the Middle East is a good stint. It's a good stint. Right. So to go to the Far East was a huge opportunity for us. The culture there, meeting new people, new cultures, traveling to new countries was a huge challenge.
All right. So you're in Kuala Lumpur, and you took what role were you over in Kuala Lumpur? I'm sorry.
Well, when I was in the Middle East, I was regional manager for the Middle East.
Right.
And then the gentleman that was my equivalent in the Far East left the company.
Okay.
So what my boss wanted to do was to merge the Middle East and the Far East together into one region, one like mega region.
Okay.
And he wanted me he basically told me, do you want to be based in Dubai, Singapore, or Kuala Lumpur? I says, well, I've been in the Middle East for 12 years. Kuala Lumpur is quite central. You can go from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing in 6 hours, Kuala Lumpur to Perth in 6 hours, back to Dubai in 7. It's a really good central area.
Really good geographic hub. Okay.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
All right. So you were over in Kuala Lumpur for how long?
12 years.
Another little stint.
So some companies do a 2 to 3 year move on. Yeah, it's like a decade in Gyrodata.
I kind of feel like that's kind of how it is. I mean, they're always promised, it's only a 2-year thing, but always extends longer than that. Because I think, once you're used to that culture, once you're used to that environment, you know how to conduct business over there, because it is a very different business mentality. And that's something that you probably have to that you could probably speak to, is actually taking in different regional cultures whenever you are conducting business.
And that's a thing that being in a corporate mothership or people that have not traveled extensively, you don't understand the nuances of cultures, right? Of how something that may work extremely well in Midland, Texas, or in Houston, or in Rockies, or wherever, works extremely well the way you conduct business. If you try that in some locations internationally, well, one, you're going to ruin your relationships really quickly, or you may end up getting no business. So there's one thing that was I'm really grateful for is ability to travel, and I've traveled every continent, dozens and dozens and dozens of countries. Every country there's an oil and gas play I've been to, and what that's given me is a grounding in cultures, where I think I can have a pretty good opinion on anything that happens just based on everything I see all around the world. I'm not in that closed-minded.
You're not reading it from the
mindset.
news. I mean, you're
Correct.
boots on the ground, meeting the people.
Yeah.
Right.
There's some great cultures out there, and there's good and bad in every cultures. And we loved living in Kuala Lumpur. There was frustrations,
right,
with living there, the infrastructure, and sometimes just the system in general was not quite as efficient as some parts of the world. But yeah, it was a great place to live. My kids were brought up there for their teenage life. They loved it.
right.
It was a great stepping stone to a lot of places in Asia Pacific. Some really good colleagues and friends from there.
Well, I can attest to that. I mean, we were talking before we started recording. I got my master's in France, and I just remember being over there. You're right. I mean, not even just France, but even in Saudi. I mean, wherever you travel, I mean, I feel like the U.S. is a very convenient country to live. Everything's 24 hours open, delivery in 2 days. People get there when they supposed to get there, but whenever you experience other cultures, I mean, it's not everything's as convenient as it is here in Houston, Texas, or wherever you're listening.
Correct. Amazon doesn't deliver quite as quickly in all those other parts of the world.
So after 12 years in KL, then where?
Well, the downturn. So boom, 2015 hit.
15, okay.
Yeah, 2015 hit, and our company, as well as every other company in oil and gas, went through a really, really painful period. So at the time, Gyrodata was going through restructuring. The original founders retired, and there was positions now available in corporate. So my CEO, Robert Traynor III, he reached out to me in the Far East and interviewed me and said, "Look, Alan, I'd like you to come to Houston. With your years and years of experience of Gyrodata and your general management skills,
right.
I would like you to come to Houston as a senior vice president." And that would have been October 2016.
Okay, and that was a yes.
That was a yes. Yeah. This yes was slightly different, because if I said no, I'm not too sure if the consequences of that. And in hindsight, I definitely made the right decision.
Do you feel that? I know you're not in your position when the last downturn in 2015 happened. I mean, do you see kind of a similar strategy taken by you or Gyrodata during the current times we're facing right now? And I'm not sure when anyone's listening to this, but we're recording this on actually September 11th, 2020. So okay. Do you notice any kind of are you doing anything? Is it? I know it's a different environment, but are you taking any pages out of the playbook?
The playbook's completely different. You've now got this double black swan event this year, which is not the same as what happened in 2015. You go back to, people think of it as a V-type dip in activity, going back to like 2009 with the financial crisis,
right?
Which was mainly North America, where you had a dramatic decline in activity, huge reduction in rig count, but it bounced back just as quickly in 2010. And then there was, for 2 or 3 years, it was extremely buoyant in the North American market. International wasn't affected so much in 2009. 2015 comes along, North America falls off a cliff in activity. After the OPEC meeting, I believe at the end of November 2014. And then the bloodline then started. You went from well over 1,000 rigs to a few hundred rigs, and tens of thousands of people lost their job.
Right.
Now, that never happened before, per se, yeah? So now what you were seeing is the balance of power was shifting, where Saudi Arabia was no longer the swing producer. And American production was going up and up and up. And now it was really just it was a market share fight, or it was a supply and demand. There was just a glut of oil on the market. And nobody had really been through that type of scenario before. So the playbook for 2015 was sort of, you were doing things, there was nothing planned.
It was kind of more of a reaction.
Correct. Now, we reacted pretty slowly. We thought it'd be another V like 2009. So we held on to a lot of people and equipment, and we burned through a lot of cash over 6 to 9 months. And so then after that, again, hundreds of people unfortunately lost their jobs as we right-sized their organization. And 2015 it didn't really end. 2016 wasn't a particularly good year. 2017, there was a slight recovery in H2. 2018 was good. 2019, not so good. And then 2020 has fallen off a cliff again. So I don't think we've ever recovered from 2015, especially on pricing.
I think that's an excellent point. I mean, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, the crash 2015, then 2020," but it's one of those things. Like, you're right, we never really did recover from the 2015 crash. So it's like, you get to a certain point and you start becoming optimistic again, and suddenly you just kick back down. So how are you communicating, I guess, this to your team? I guess what's going on. I mean, what kind of tools are you using, I guess, to I guess kind of lead your team through these dark times?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit and explain the 2020 downturn. So for us, Robert, my CEO, was obviously just arrived in Gyrodata at the start of the downturn in 2015, and he remembers that we reacted probably too slowly, or we did react too slowly. So when we had this double black swan event in March, April, he said, "Alan, we need to react quickly to preserve cash in our company." And we reacted really quickly, and that was something we didn't do in 2015. And then really what we tried to do is to, as quickly as possible, get ourselves into a position where we basically batten down the hatches, get to a lean organization, and right size based on activity. Again, unfortunately, there's a lot of human sacrifice in that. A lot of people lost their jobs, not only in North America, but in Europe as well, just as activity fell off a cliff. So we reacted really, really quickly, but we didn't stop investing in our new technology.
Okay.
So it was to preserve cash effectively, and we're a private company. We've got no debt. So for us, we weren't at the mercy of banks, unlike some other companies. So for us, that was the strategy of preserving cash and make sure there was no cash burn every month. We did that really, really well, really quickly. But over the last few years, we've been developing technology to help us grow and get through what was still a continual downturn from 2015. Our clients wanted savings across the board. They had cut the actual invoices as much as they possibly could. Yeah. Pricing from 2015 now was like 40%, 50% of what it was. So we had to become lean.
Right.
How can we produce technology with a lower capital cost? How can we produce technology with a lower operating cost? How can we develop technology that's more automated and it's more digital in its method of operating? How can we uncrew operations where there's less people involved in the execution of jobs? So we started looking at that 2-3 years ago as part of our transformation strategy of going from a service company to a technology provider.
Okay.
And that's something that I'm so glad that we had the vision to do this 2 or 3 years ago, because this year and last year we've introduced technology that deliver on that differentiates us in the market, where we can give a value proposition that our competitors cannot. And that's because of the last 2 or 3 years of investment in this strategy to provide low capital cost equipment, low OPEX costs, and then uncrewing operations.
So your response back then, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Your responses back then have kind of set you where you guys are at today when it comes to reacting to 2020.
Yeah.
So it's not just, I mean, have y'all always been a diversified company? Because I went to y'all's website, and it's not just oil and gas that y'all are in. It's what other industries are that y'all serve?
Well, Gyrodata provide wellbore placement solutions as gyroscopic surveying or surveying instruments. So just to educate your audience, GPSs don't work underground. They require a signal from a satellite. If they did work underground, I'd be out of a job. So you've got to use gyroscopes and accelerometers to find the position under the ground. And that's not an easy task.
Right.
It's not an easy task. So Gyrodata is really all about wellbore positioning and gyroscopes.
You've been at Gyrodata for 32 years. I kind of want to speak about that. It seems with a shark mentality about always swimming forward. You don't hear people being at a company that long these days. I mean, even if it's 5 years to 7 years, I mean, that's still a long time these days. I mean, what has kept you at Gyrodata for 32 years, your entire professional career? That's something that interests me.
I am not alone in Gyrodata. This is not an anomaly. So yes, I've been with Gyrodata 32 years. Our engineering manager has been 36 years. The 4 regional managers that work for me around the world, the one in Aberdeen's 30 years, Middle East 20 years, North America 16 years. So we have a very, very tenured staff, and these people have started from field engineer level or junior levels and worked their way up through the organization. So they know the organization inside out. And we're like a band of brothers. That's what we call each other when we meet, that we know each other extremely well. We're all extremely good friends. There's no backstabbing. There's no corporate politics. We're not trying to climb over each other's body to please the boss. So we're all really good friends, and we help each other. So it's, to answer your question, why I'm still at Gyrodata and all these other people are, is the family culture of Gyrodata.
I was going to say, with people being there 16 years, 30 years, 32, I mean, yeah, you definitely know those people. I mean, they're not strangers. Yeah. They're more your family than colleagues.
Correct.
If that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, what regarding our industry, what are you anxious about for the near future? What's keeping you up at night with our industry?
It's the volatility of it. So back 10 years ago, I just wasn't exposed to this volatility where all of a sudden you're a 1,200 person organization. 1 year later, you're 700 people. You grow again to 900 to 1,000, and then you cut again another 300. So for me, what keeps is anxious is, what does the future bode for us? Right. What is COVID going to do over the winter? Are the E&P companies going to have good budgets for next year? Are they going to spend money? Are they going to hold money? Yeah. So that's what I'm anxious about just now, is what is 2021 going to look like? Is it 2020 in activity annualized, or is there going to be slight growth, or is it going to continue to decline? So that's what I'm anxious about. I'm anxious about that, to ensure that we continue to at least maintain the company size and then grow going forward. So for me, it's, you got a lot of weight on your shoulders when you're in a position like mine, because I've got about 600 people directly or indirectly reporting to me, and it's, for me, they're all family. Right. And making one of them redundant is really, really tough, not only for them but also for me.
What about what keeps you? What are you excited about?
Well, technology and the company. So it's not only the tech; it's the opportunities. So I believe that we're very well positioned to grow rapidly as we come out of this. We've got, I mean, absolutely groundbreaking technology coming. I cannot believe how well the teams have done in the last 2-3 years producing technology. It's when there's a will, there's a way, and they've just got this heroic effort and mindset, that family mindset of, yes, we can get this done. And we've delivered on that. And that's huge for me, is that we can, if we all stay as one team and march together or row in the same direction, you can achieve fantastic results.
How are you communicating this new technology to the customers right now, when, first off, the customers, you really can't see them? You can't do office visits or presentation. How are you all getting in? How are you all communicating the advancements technology that Gyrodata is currently experiencing?
Well,
or creating.
Gyrodata is 40 years old on the 1st of September this year. So we've got a lot of contacts within all the IOCs and NOCs globally. Okay. So people know us. We're not cold selling. It's not a transactional sale like a lot of American work. We've known a lot of the people in oil companies for over a decade or two. So we're well known. And then they have their own technical groups for wellbore placement, and we're part of those groups as well with industry steering committees. So it's relatively easy for us to communicate this technology, either via LinkedIn, webinars, lunch and learns, etc. And that's what we've effectively done for the last year.
It's been extremely difficult for some people to communicate kind of what's new at their company, because people aren't seeing people. So I guess this, y'all doing a good job. What kind of what am I not asking that I don't know to ask?
It's a good question. I don't know what.
Is there anything is there a specific thing that you're excited about with Gyrodata that you'd like to discuss or plug or something?
Well, I would say plug. Again, I'd like to think of this podcast more as information sharing from my wisdom, having lived in every continent in the world and several countries and traveled the world. And it's more of a message for the younger people in the organizations, where they feel that they're a roadblock or they can't move on. Is people and I see this with my children as well, that they think they know everything. That they're 24, 25, and they think they're 90 percentile on the way to knowledge and wisdom.
They're invincible.
Exactly. And I'm saying that, I'm not being generalist here, but it's don't stop learning. And that's one thing. If I didn't know something, I'd go and pick up a book, call somebody, go on a course or do something. Just do not stop learning. And if you suddenly think that you know everything, you become complacent and you're stagnating, you're not going to grow anymore. So really the message for the younger people entering the oil field, and it's really tough, is to don't stop learning. Just continue to learn all the time. And again, maybe I'm an example of this. If the opportunity is there, think twice before you say no.
So what skill sets do you think could be that people should learn right now? What skill sets are you seeing that are probably more important, or that you are focusing on more, or your team?
For me, teamwork is huge.
Right.
So individualistic performance, working as an individual for me is not good for a corporation. So I think I gave my boss in my appraisal a couple of years ago the analogy of soccer. So I was explaining, why does the English soccer team always do dreadful at the World Cup when they've got 11 of the best players in the entire world and probably the best manager in the world as well? This is not only akin just to England, it could be several other soccer teams. So you've got 11 prima donnas, no offense to the England soccer team, yeah? Yeah. I'd mentioned Scotland, but Scotland never gets in the World Cup, so let's not go there, yeah? So with England, you've got 11, you've got the best goalkeeper, best defender, best striker, etc. Why do they not win? It's because they're working as individuals.
Okay.
But they're not working to protect the weakest member of the team, to aid that person, to try and collectively reach some sort of goal, like winning the game. And they're not listening to their manager per se, because that manager is not their manager at their club. So they don't have that empathetic bond with the manager. They don't feel a team, and the manager's telling them what to do, but they don't have that family ownership within the team. So they don't win. And that's where, if you look at like a third or fourth division team in the English football club, sometimes they beat the mighty Man Uniteds and Liverpools. And even though they're nowhere near as skilled, they work together as a team, and they can have huge triumphs by beating the best teams in the world. So that's, for me, that's huge. It's teamwork of us all working together, not focusing on people's weaknesses. I use the Pareto principle. Everybody's got about 20% weakness, areas they need to improve upon, and we all know what those are. But don't focus on that. Try and focus on the 80% of their strengths and develop those strengths within the team. And then everybody note what other people's weaknesses are. And if the weaknesses become an issue for the team, plug the gap. Don't just dismiss that person, terminate them, and replace them.
Right.
So to create that culture of teamwork. So I see in a lot of larger corporations that there's people are in their own silos, and they play the BCC game on emails. They play the games on emails where they're, you know what I'm talking about. They're
looking out for themselves versus the larger picture, the direction of the company. Right.
So the message I have for younger people that are moving into industry or mid-career people is work as a team. In the long term, it always succeeds. Trying to look good in front of other people or make other people look bad or look good in front of your boss is short term. It's not the way to have a long-term career in the oil and gas industry. It's a way too small of an industry.
That's the thing. I had Ryan Keys on yesterday, and we were discussing that. We were discussing the fact that that's all you got is your name, you know. And if you are one of those people that do BC or backstab, and I mean, that's going to carry with you. That's going to tarnish your name. And in this industry, as we said, it's small, it's connected. Everyone, if I don't know you, I know someone that knows you. That's kind of how it works out in our industry.
We can name drop at the bar all afternoon.
And we'll find some. So, all right. Well, Alan, I think first off, I guess another thing that I'd like to bring up, you've done the MS 150 for the past 8 years. I read online. That's correct? And it's not going on this year because of COVID. Is that?
Well, that was something we pushed as part of our social corporate responsibility programs, and we've had a lot of our relationships that we've developed internally are from rides like that. You ride with your fellow colleagues for 180 miles. You're in a tent together. You've got the camaraderie. So I talk about teamwork, camaraderie, covering each other's backs. It's like military. Yeah. Everybody knows exactly what the other person's role is. They respect it and they communicate effectively. So yeah, the MS-150 for me is just, it's fantastic.
You looking forward to do it when it's back on?
Fingers crossed. I hope it's not virtual. We're all on one of these virtual bikes, all
trying to Pelotons,
trying to get to Austin together on a virtual bike. Fingers crossed that's not the case. Yeah,
that's not the same. So, you ever see yourself living anywhere else? I mean, if the opportunity comes up,
never say no.
Never say no. All right, and we are back with Alan, and as we got off, I realized that I didn't bring up one of the things that I actually want to talk about the most. I kind of want to hear some stories about your living abroad or living internationally.
Well, JP, it was funny for everybody else, but not so funny for me. So I'd been invited by a client in China to have a technical presentation for their groups. So I flew to Beijing and another flight, 2 or 3 hour flights into the countries, into the inner part of China. Arrive there, get taken to the oil company, have a translator. Quite weird doing a PowerPoint presentation in English, 10 seconds of speaking in English and somebody else speaks in Mandarin to replay.
Man, so, that's got to be, I mean, if they're not picking up that's kind of how presentations are. You got to read the room, you got to know what I mean, that would be extremely awkward.
And there was 300 people in the audience, and they're looking like stone statues. So at the end of it, because I'd spent so much time and effort to visit this client, basically the president for that entire group invited me to a banquet, a luncheon.
All right.
And I'd asked the translator, said, "Look, what's the culture here? I've never been to a Chinese luncheon like this before in China." Yeah. And I said, "Well, Alan, you'll be taken into a room. You sit at the opposite side, away from the door, facing the door, and you wait until the host sits down, and you sit to his right." I said, "Okay, I've got this. Is that all I need to know?" I said, "Yeah, that's all you need to know, Alan." So it's very formal. My translator's not in the room. Don't know a word of Mandarin. They don't know a word of English. So it's amazing how well you can do with sign language and smiles,
gestures,
gestures. So it was a great honor for him, and I was really honored that he'd take me out for lunch personally. So there's about 14 people around this table, and it's a hierarchy. So there's him, myself as the most top guest.
Okay.
Then it's his next in command, then his next in command going round the table until the least important person is opposite with his back to the door, which is in Chinese is not a great thing.
Okay.
So the food comes in. So it comes to him. So the dish is handed to him. It's like individual dishes. It's handed to him, and he hands it to me to serve me. And then he takes it back, serves himself, and then it goes around the rest of the table. So I was obviously first.
Okay.
So this, I don't know what it was at the time, was put on my plate. So I get my chopsticks. I'm pretty good with chopsticks. Got my chopsticks, take this in my mouth and start chewing it. Everybody's looking at me. So I'm chewing, and JP, I am chewing. Yeah. This thing is not disintegrating.
Oh gosh.
So after I was starting to become red. Yeah. And I was thinking, why are they all staring at me? And I picked up some rosehip syrup. It's like a type of drink. It's a rosehip syrup with water. And took a gulp of that and then swallowed it. Every single person in the room is on the floor laughing. They're in hysterics.
All right.
So I am now not knowing what this is. Yeah. So the translator was called, because he wasn't at the luncheon, was called from outside in. And they all explained to him. And what it was, I know it sounds a bit gross, but it was actually a pig's trotter that they had shaved into like 1/8 shavings. They'd boiled it with a broth to give it flavor. Now, what I was supposed to do was to suck the flavor out of basically the pig's toenail and then spit it on the plate. Now, I'm not going to spit anything on my plate. My mom and dad didn't raise me to spit things on their plate.
And how are you supposed to know that?
Exactly. So I swallowed. So they're in fits of laughter
Oh.
because I'd basically swallowed this instead of spitting it onto the plate in front of me. So they were honest. They were on the floor in hysterics that this guaylo, this white ghost, had no idea what to do. So it wasn't funny for me. So after that, I just ate everything and just didn't. Yeah, it was. At the time, it was
That'd be great to have that'd be great to have the translator in the room before. Maybe next time they'll do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Have the translator in the room. You got any other any memorable moments?
No,
like that?
I've got loads of memorable moments. Very happy times in a lot of these countries. But
did you enjoy living in Kuala Lumpur or the Middle East more?
Chapters of books. It's like people ask you, "What's your favorite book?"
Yeah.
And I don't have a favorite book. It's different types of books. So when I moved to the Middle East, it was my kids were young. I was newly married, young kids. At the time in the Middle East, in Abu Dhabi, not Dubai, but Abu Dhabi, was a village. It was a small city. We did a lot of things with boating in the deserts, camping. So when we left, we shifted to Kuala Lumpur, and we missed the beach. We were beach bums. We missed the beach. But when we moved to Kuala Lumpur, the kids were older now. They were teenagers. And then we had some great times in Kuala Lumpur. So when we closed the chapter in Abu Dhabi, we never missed Abu Dhabi per se or regretted leaving. And then we moved to Kuala Lumpur, and the same thing there. So I see it everywhere I live or visit. It's like a chapter in a book. And then coming to the US, Texas, and especially winter and spring and fall, I've got an RV, I've got my pickup truck. I get out there to the Texas state parks, which I love. I love the outdoors in Texas, not in summertime, but in fall.
Have you been using your RV a lot more lately?
Well, before I left in March, I used the RV every weekend. Myself and my wife. Yeah, we're out there. We've got the we've got the RV, the pickup truck, and we're out. We just love it.
I've heard that you purchase an RV these days since March, since COVID, it's been extremely difficult to do.
It's fully booked, a lot of the places you go. But the Texas, you can get out there in Texas, and you can go to some of the amazing places. Some of these state parks, like Huntsville and even further out, are just fantastic. You can take your mountain bike, you can take the dog, mountain bike, get up in the morning, do 10, 15-mile ride on the bike. Yeah, you just have to be careful with the snakes, obviously. And then at nighttime, you go fishing at the lake. It's fantastic.
I get the lifestyle. Was it as busy before in March, or did it just like since March it's been just booked?
I don't know. I know before March it's always busy. The Texas state parks are always busy, but I know now it's really, really difficult to get bookings. I think maybe everybody's the same. They prefer to go out in their own RV. They're in their own family unit. They're not exposed to COVID-19 or coronavirus. Right. It's safe.
Yeah. I get it, and the memories too. You know, you're not staying in a hotel. You're making some pretty great memories with your family. So I'm gonna leave you with this joke. What is the difference between Dubai and Abu Dhabi?
Abu Dhabi do.
Exactly. People in Dubai don't like the Flintstones, but people in Abu Dhabi do. So
yeah.
I thought that was good. I think I'm going to tell my daughter that one. I think she'll like it. So she's 7. She didn't even think I'm funny. So anyway, Alan, I appreciate it. And you have a good weekend. And are you taking the RV this weekend?
If I had a spot, I would. Otherwise, no. Unfortunately, there's no space available. But next weekend, I'm heading down to Galveston. So
okay, that'll be fun. All right. Well, enjoy your trip, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, JP.